Hey, I'm Di Gillett, and this is the Power of Women podcast. We're a platform that showcases and celebrates the strength, resilience and achievement of women from all walks of life. In each episode, I pose questions to my guests to peel away the layers to reveal the knowledge and the experience that shapes their narrative. So if you're feeling unseen, unheard, or simply looking for inspiration, then the Power of Women podcast is a great place to join the conversation.
What do men need to understand? Well, I don't really like that question because some do, some don't. Women are generally stronger, I would say. Many men abide and many men don't. So there's no one rule. So for me, I just accept people as they come. And women need to follow their passion, as do all human beings, and also to get educated.
Hey, I'm Di Gillett, and this is the Power of Women podcast. It's been difficult to pin today's guest down because she's a global traveller, she's a prolific traveller, and as you've heard, she has many strings to her bow. Lindy Joubert, welcome to the Power of Women. I understand there's been a number of influences in your life, Lindy. Can you share with us just a few?
Well, of course, we start with the family. And I did have pretty marvellous parents, interesting parents, I would say quite unconventional. We came from Sydney. It was a very interesting Sydney French family who were more or less the pioneers and developers of Hunters Hill in Sydney. So all my aunts and uncles and grandparents were very delightful people who used to have soirees every week and were again quite eccentric, but a very interesting family in Sydney. My mother's mother was a grandmother. My grandmother, she was a great influence. She was the matron of the Royal Sydney Hospital Children's Ward, and then she started a hospital in a big old home in Lindfield, became the largest private hospital on the North Shore of Sydney. And we used to, when we came to Melbourne, we used to go up and visit her 3 times a year because she paid for us to go up after we came to Melbourne. So my grandmother was a great influence. My parents were both well educated. My father was a professor of mechanical engineering and my mother trained as a social worker and later on trained as a psychologist. So she worked from the time I was 14. So I would say parents and home. I grew up in Brighton, lovely, happy life, beautiful school, wonderful friends. We're all still great friends. So friends and family, lucky to have had a very interesting environment. My father was a yachtsman, so sailing at weekends, by the beach. Perfect life, really.
Wow. The influences in your background, Lindy, around service and creativity is almost in the genes, is it not?
Well, it is, because my grandfather, my mother's father was a very impressive man. My mother's mother was a very exceptional woman. And yes, and I spent a lot of time with her. And so both my parents really just dedicated themselves to doing things for other people, I would say.
And you followed in their footsteps?
Well, it's just my interest, it's something that we, yes, it is in the genes. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, fabulous.
They weren't interested in money per se at all. And often that's because they both grew up in very privileged circumstances. So it wasn't something they strove for. But my father's French family, they had chateau in France, many sailing ships. This was, a century or so ago. Land in New Caledonia, tin mines and cattle farms. So they were very affluent people. And my father just said, I wonder where it all went.
I wonder. I wonder. So, Lindy, your background is quite amazing, and I know you've lived and worked overseas and still have a very established career here. Tell us a little about the background.
Well, I was very lucky at about the age of 28 to get a job teaching at which it was Phillip Institute, which is now RMIT. So I was 28. I'd been a book designer before that, and I was teaching graphic design. And so that really started my teaching at a university. And then I got a job at the Melbourne State College or Melbourne College of Advanced Education.
They've all changed their names.
Yeah, they've all changed. That had about 6 name changes in the time I was there. So that was on the corner of Grattan and Swanston Street, and it was a very wonderful course where you did a full art course and you were being trained as a teacher at the same time. That was marvellous. And then I was taken into the architecture faculty where I have been for about the last 32, 33 years.
Wow.
And the reason for that was because I was teaching drawing off my own bat to a group of students who said they wanted to take extra drawings, so they came over to me, and that's how it happened. And when architecture actually almost lost accreditation because there were brilliant students having never picked up a pencil, all physics, maths and chemistry. So the subject that I taught, visual communications, design communications, was about teaching them how to see the world, how to draw, how to represent their ideas, how to understand perspective, all the things that architects need. So I had a wonderful career there. But then I, after giving a paper somewhere, someone asked me to go and work in my study leave, because I was going off to Harvard to do a short study leave for 3 or 4 months, come to UNESCO in Paris and write up what I was doing at Harvard. And I went to Paris, and that was a 3-month contract. And then that became 3 years. And I would have continued there. I would have stayed on. But my job at Melbourne Uni, the dean said, well, what do you want, Lindy, that job or this job? Because they had given me time off, which you're able to do as an academic. So my daughter needed me. I did love my job at Melbourne Uni. So I came back and I set up the UNESCO Observatory.
So tell us about that. What exactly have you established?
The UNESCO Observatory is a sort of a name like a centre for UNESCO. Mm-hmm. And it was Richard Engelhardt, who was the cultural advisor to UNESCO, who I was spending quite a bit of time with at various meetings and activities. And he had the idea to set up sort of these centres in various parts of Asia to build up the arts. Yeah, so we'd had huge conferences, and there's such a need for the arts across the whole region, across the whole world. But we were really in the Asia-Pacific region. So I, through UNESCO, took about 18 months for it to be established that I might do it. And then it took almost another, at least a year or 18 months for it to be approved at the university. And someone at the uni said, Lindy, I just don't know how you did it because, it was...
How did you do it?
Well, I had Frank Larkin, who was the Deputy Vice-Chancellor. He is really particular, and he went through it with a fine-tooth comb, and they just felt that it was a worthwhile thing. And, of course, I was,
driving it.
Yes, driving for it all the time. So it was just good luck and good timing. And then I ran that in the architecture faculty, and that was a wonderful thing because I took all the architecture students off. I think we went over 16 countries.
Wow.
And we'd go off on these trips with a group of architecture students in a postgraduate design studio, and we would design things. So I'm not an architect, but I am a designer, and I had all the interest in cultural communities and building up opportunities for impoverished groups. So we designed art centres, health centres, cultural centres.
Fantastic.
We did it in Australia about 6 or 8 times, and then across a number of countries. So it was great. Went to Africa twice, Cook Islands, Thailand. We went on various places.
And
yes.
you have something next year that you touched on that's all part of that from the stars, is that right?
Well, I go now after I came back to Melbourne and set up the UNESCO Observatory, and through UNESCO when I was there during my early days, when I was working at UNESCO, I met a woman called Surapi Rajanavongsi, who was president of the World Craft Council Asia Pacific region. And she asked me to join up, which I did. And that has been life-changing because it's an amazing organisation. There's it covers all the regions of Asia. So you've got South Asia and East Asia and West Asia and Central Asia, and you've got the South Pacific. We had meetings constantly, and we had activities and big festivals, and it's very constant. So the World Craft Council was set up 60 years ago in New York City by Amy Vanderbilt, and it's gone on very successfully. And it's rather an unknown organisation, but it's starting to become a little bit more known. And anyway, I'm heavily involved with that. I was the Vice President for the South Pacific for 8 years, I think. And now I'm a board member and advisor and still very involved. The next president is going to be an Australian because there's a rotational thing of president, and now it's Australia's turn, and a woman from Western Australia, outstanding woman, will be the next president. So I'll be there to assist her when if she needs it.
You've got a lot going on.
Well, I do actually.
How do you juggle it all? It's amazing.
I think I always just said you can do anything you want to do. You just do it. You don't let anything stand in your way. But I do find often I am quite overwhelmed. At the moment, I'm quite overwhelmed. I'm doing these books, and I've done 2 books. And the third book, I've sent it off to the publisher.
So you're a designer, you're an artist, you're a writer.
I am a writer, but these books are a result of the World Craft Council.
Right.
Because I go to all these amazing countries, and I ask people who are experts in their field, would you like to write an essay that will go into a book that will be there, translated into French, German and Japanese and written in English, into a big suite of books for libraries around the world. So substantial books. And people are quite happy to do it. So I've got enough authors to do actually about 4 or 5 books. And currently I've done 2, and I've got another one I've just sent. But we had a bit of a tough reviewer, which is okay. I'm addressing all those, but I thought I'd got rid of it, and now I've got it back in my... Anyway, I'm working on that at the moment. Yeah. So, look, you just have to do it. And I guess I have to restrict my activities.
Yeah, because you're wearing a lot of hats.
Yes, and so I love the travelling, so I'll drop everything for that. And I must say I work pretty hard in a fairly disciplined way. If I had written the books myself, it would have been a much speedier and more efficient process.
Than herding cats.
Yeah. Exactly. And you've got 22 authors in this book, and they've all got different languages. And one of the complaints was, the language was sort of all over the place.
Yes.
I thought I'd edited it, and it was all quite satisfactory, but I think I've had a copy editor.
Hence your critic.
Yeah, so anyway, it's a wonderful thing to be doing. It's the end of my career and having something substantial to leave behind, more or less.
End of your career. You have to pull up stumps in a lot of things, Lindy, for that to be the case. So how many trips are you doing a year as you wear your various hats?
Well, it's up to around 6, I'd say.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yes, it's a lot. I'm about to go again. I've just had 3.5 weeks across Uzbekistan, Tajikistan and Kazakhstan.
Fantastic.
And I'm about to go to India for the 60th Diamond Jubilee, big anniversary. And then there's another one maybe in Baguio in the Philippines, but I have to work, will I do 2 before Christmas? But this year I've been to the stands earlier. Anyway, I think I've had 6 trips to date already.
That's incredible.
Yes, it's a lot. It's very unsettling, actually.
Yeah.
It's hard to get back to my work.
And there would be a lot of people in your decade who would be having far cosier lifestyles than what you're doing. I mean, it's just extraordinary.
Well, I think both my parents were like this, lots of energy. My mother was a very buoyant person. I think I've got her buoyancy, so she was very positive and, all full of ideas and, lots of activity and energy to do things. And my father actually was an incredible achiever. He was responsible for seatbelts in cars, and he was a big yacht designer and had designed about 30 different yacht designs. And
so did you feel pressured to put your stamp on the world on the basis of that?
I did it. I do everything because I love doing it. And I was a bit, not rebellious. I wouldn't say I was rebellious. I was quite sensible, but I was energetic, I'd say. And I was very energetic doing my own things, not really being... My parents were very flexible and very, open. They weren't restrictive. I mean, they were very tough on me, actually, discipline-wise, when I was young. But I got to a point where I just did my own thing just because I loved doing it.
So you busier now than you were in your 20s and 30s?
Oh, yes, because I had children then too, you see.
So you had to pull back on this activity.
When I was 32.
Yeah.
And so I had my 2 little children, but then I went off to America actually for 3 years with my children, and I got a higher degree over there. But that was that feeling, you can do anything you want to do.
And
the university was such a wonderful job because it encouraged that.
Yes.
It encouraged you to get higher degrees and encouraged you to travel and encouraged you to write up and make publications. So I was very fortunate. It was the best job in the world, I have to say.
You have a very curious mind, and I can see that in terms of your adventure and exploration. Yeah, brilliant.
Oh, well, I don't know how it seems, but I've had a pretty good time. I shouldn't say I've had a good time. I should say, wipe the sweat off my brow.
No, celebrate it for what it is.
Yes.
Well, coming up, we're going to discuss more about Lindy Joubert, the artist. If you're loving the Power of Women podcasts, be sure to jump on to our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button to ensure you never miss an episode. So, Lindy, before the break, I said we're going to come back and explore Lindy Joubert, the artist, but I'd like to revisit something you said in the first part of our discussion, that your father designed the seatbelt. Tell us about that.
Well, it was actually a Swedish man who designed them, and that was a long time ago, I think probably in Volvo cars. But my father was a pilot in the Second World War, and his plane crashed in the jungle in Papua New Guinea. And he was in the squadron that actually one of the key squadrons kept the Japanese out of Australia, for which he and his squadron received special medals from Prince Philip when he came out. So they were a recognised squadron for being particularly courageous.
And he survived a plane crash.
He survived the plane crash, and he was in the jungle upside down in his seatbelt, lap sash belt for the plane. So he realised when he got back and life got back to normal, we're all from Sydney, but he came to Melbourne University, and he decided to research seatbelts in cars because he was
recognising that it saved his life.
It had saved his life. And so he did 17 years of research with cars from GMH and Ford. Anyway, which company, I don't know.
When we had manufacturers.
Yes, and we were always driving around in a car, often without seats, but with a computer next to the driver. So my father would pick up the girls for dancing class. Yeah. We're all sitting in this big car with a computer and no seats, so it was all very funny.
And a computer would have been very large in those days.
Well, it was like that, about that size. So 12 inches square or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point was he did this research, and then he said he went to Arthur Ryler and Bolte and said, look, I've done all this research. It definitely saves lives. And he said, miraculously, they said, yes, let's do it.
Wow.
So Victoria, in fact, became the first place in the world.
Under Henry Bolte's era.
Yes, to legislate seatbelts. And a man called Gordon Trinker, he was a surgeon who went with my father quite a few years later, and they went together through the wards where people were having shocking accidents, like, spinal and, just shocking accidents from going
being
through
thrown out of
windscreens.
cars, yes.
And so he was part of it, but my father was way before Gordon Trinker.
Yeah.
And my father was the one who had approached the government, and the government was the one that agreed. So all credit to them for going ahead with this. And then my father, a few years later, would go with, all around the American car companies, very well-known name you'd know, And they refused to put seatbelts in cars because they said, no, it's going to spoil our advertising campaigns because we advertise cars as the happy family vehicle for picnics and having fun.
And if being belted in
indicates there might be a negative side to a motor car, so they wouldn't do it. But eventually they did do it. And Ralph Nader, he went with Ralph Nader.
Ralph Nader, yes.
He was quite a remarkable fellow.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that was that. And my father got very well, acknowledged for everything he did there. He actually was offered to represent Australia for a Queen Elizabeth Medal, which is people in science and engineering and things who has saved the most lives. So he was asked to represent Australia through seatbelts because it saved so many thousands and thousands of lives. But another man, a medical man, got it for some vaccine. So
I can credit him with saving my father's life many years ago because the seatbelt is what saved him. He did it upside down in a Mercedes four-wheel drive in country Victoria.
Oh, fancy that.
And the seatbelt absolutely saved his life. There's no question.
Oh, there is no question. And now you just do it automatically and feel so uncomfortable. If you go to Asia or any of these countries, don't worry about putting on the seatbelt. And they don't even have seatbelts in the back seats of their cars.
Well, here's the 6 degrees of separation too, Lindy. The irony of that was my father was the youngest member of Sir Henry's government many moons ago. So there's the join the dots full circle moment, isn't it?
Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Great.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and we digress. So let's talk about Lindy Joubert, the artist. When we spoke earlier in the year, you were just heading off to a country village, I think, in Italy to paint. How did that trip go?
Well, that was at a little town on top of a mountain. It was a medieval town called Montalparo, and it was inland about an hour's drive from Ancona on the east coast. And they were halfway up Italy, just halfway in the middle, and no tourism and these glorious little medieval villages and just, simple lives. And a very nice couple from England, she'd been a banker, and they bought this old 15th century hotel, and they spent a lot of time and money renovating it, and they open it up to various activities like poetry or painting or whatever.
Creatives.
So an Australian artist called Richard Claremont was running this, and he's a beautiful painter, and it's slightly in my style, but he's much looser, and so I thought this would be a really good thing to do. So there was about 10 of us in the group, and we went out every day into the landscape. We stayed in this boutique hotel. It was a very compatible, happy group. And it was just the most wonderful experience. We had sightseeing to all the places as well, and fantastic English couple looked after us beautifully. So couldn't recommend that more often.
Yeah.
Yes.
So where did your career as an artist start?
Well, it probably started when I was about 12 or 14. I used to make little cards. And I used to sell them to a little shop in Brighton called the Brighton Gallery. And it was just a little single-fronted shop, and I used to take my cards in, and I got probably 25 cents each. But I was selling these cards, and I did that for a while. And then when I was about 16, I used to sell them to Sports Girl in the city, and they hadn't paid me for a while, so I walked up.
In the days where Sports Girl was that fabulous treasure trove in town.
Exactly. Yeah. So I walked up to the offices on the top floor. I said, look, I've been selling you these cards, but I haven't been paid yet. And a man behind me said, so you make cards, do you? And I said, yes, here they are, and I haven't been paid. And he said, how would you like to do some murals for our windows in Collins Street?
It was David Bardos.
It was. And so that was pretty exciting.
Wow.
So they were my early days of painting. But my first exhibition was in the first year I got married, which was, I was only 22 or something. And my ex-husband's aunt used to do bark paintings, and we had a joint exhibition in Swan Hill on the Gem riverboat. So that was my first exhibition. And then my second exhibition was at the Hawthorne Regional art gallery, which was a very nice gallery.
Yeah.
And then I just went on to many galleries, South Yarra Gallery, and I used to show in 101 Collins Street, and I used to show at the Holsworth Gallery in Sydney. So all of these galleries have closed down now, which is bad luck. But I then, my father had always belonged to the New York Yacht Club. So his inspiration, I joined an art club in America, in New York. It was called the Pen and Brush Club. It's the oldest club for women writers, artists and musicians. And Pearl Buck and presidents' wives were always members. So I joined up. I had to go through a few scrutinising
hurdles
committees
to get there.
And it has the most wonderful gallery. So I've had about 6 exhibitions with them.
In New York.
In this beautiful old brownstone and a very well-regarded gallery. And so that sort of opened up lots for me, yes. And so I've actually had about 42 exhibitions now.
Is that all?
And I'd say it's about 24 solo exhibitions.
Incredible.
And the others are group exhibitions. So people at the uni, when you do your CV, you always say, I've had 44 exhibitions, so many solos, so many group exhibitions. But I have exhibitions now occasionally at the Lyceum Club in Melbourne.
Yes.
Because that's the art club of Melbourne, Artie Club. And that's great for me because I'm so busy doing other things. But I found a gallery down in Portsea, lovely woman who lived in Greece on Mykonos, Alison, and she has the Aegean Art Gallery.
Ah, yes.
And she's going to have a joint Christmas for many artists down there at Christmas in Portsea. So that's just something. But I've got to seriously get back to painting again. Yes.
And what's your preferred medium? Tell us about your style.
Well, I used to use oils, but these days, because I always paint at home and I'm in rather a confined space, although the smell isn't as bad as it used to be. It used to be toxic and it's not really anymore, but still a bit dodgy.
Small spaces knock you out.
So I use acrylics.
Right.
I like acrylics. I find it very easy, yes.
And what's the influence?
Well, I studied in America for 3 years and I do love some of the American painters. I love the painters of the Hudson River Valley artists, and I like some Californian artists like Richard Diebenkorn, and I love old romantic painters like Alma Tadema and the pre-Raphaelite painters. So, but my style of painting, they call it, well, in New York, they wrote up about what I do and they said it's magic realism. So it's real, but it's fanciful at the same time.
Right.
So in all my, like in Italy or when I was studying in New York, I was working at the uni there too, we'd go out and do a lot of landscape painting. So I'm a landscape painter, but I make it a little bit quirky, if you know what I mean.
And I can see that.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So does art play a role in your life beyond the creative aspect? It does, because that's the UNESCO is still a creative extension
It is.
of your world in the arts.
And the World Craft Council. It's all about the arts and the crafts. So the meeting in the Philippines is about, it's a textile ikat event.
Yes.
And the ones in the stands are all about jewellery and metalwork. And
that would be amazing.
Yeah, they're just wonderful.
And that's coming here.
No, I go there.
You go there?
Yes, I go there. So all the time I'm immersed in these beautiful crafts and arts. And
you must have quite a collection because it'd be tempting to purchase all the time.
It's very bad. I was trying to clear up my drawers this morning and I thought, oh, my God, because your family don't want it. My granddaughters might be interested.
There must be some amazing pieces,
Well, I'm always on a budget.
Yes.
But when you're over there, I don't know if you've heard of, Borneo beads.
Yes.
I go to Borneo. And so I've got lots and lots of these amazing, very old, they could be 200, 300 years old.
Incredible.
Sort of ceramic, or I don't know what they are, but they're glorious colours and big and bold and fabulous. So, yes, I have quite an assortment, that's true. But I have to do something because they're not real treasures. but they're interesting.
But they're a collectible. You have to
people would love
introduce you
them.
to our very dear friend Claudia Chanshaw, who you may or may not know, Vivian Chanshaw's daughter.
No, I don't know.
And she does the series The Collectors, and she would love to see what you have in your collection. We'll have to join the dots.
Oh, it's a very humble collection, really. It's just...
Well, but because it's unique products from around the world.
Well, I have lots of lovely clothes and things, you know.
I bet you do.
Yes, but I have to stop buying because there's a limit to what you can fit in your cupboard or in your house.
I know that. I know that. I can't fit another thing, Lindy.
Yes, I'm the same.
So in terms of, is your artistic pursuits part of your commercial that sustains you commercially, or?
Well, if I was a full-time artist, I used to sell almost everything that I did. I used to have sell-out shows a lot. But I don't think people are buying so much these days. The last exhibition, COVID came and the place was closed most of the time, so that was really bad luck for me. But always I sell something. The Lyceum Club I've been showing perhaps the last 4 times. Well, it's not really a seller's market, if you know.
No, I wouldn't have thought that's the obvious place.
So I've really just got to, I think, do the books and then get on to seriously trying to do my work and sell it, you know.
Yeah.
I could have been a professional artist if I'd stayed with it, but I've made a mistake of just doing too many things.
Well, mistake or just a rich lived life.
Yes, thank you, Dad.
Yeah. Incredible. So what's your next project? What are you working on next?
Well, just to finish these books.
Yeah.
So I've got this one and I've got another one in my hands now, about to go. And then my plan was to have 6 in this series. And it's called Educating in the Crafts, a Global Experience.
Yes.
And it's going into a very large suite of books on technical vocational educational training, because a lot of money around the world is being poured into, it's called TVET, because all the art and craft, or the craft training schools like RMIT and ANU and everywhere, they're closing down major parts of their craft training sections. So at the same time, the government is pouring more money into TAFEs and technical vocational training colleges. So that's what these books are about. And the man who's doing this giant series, he was a UNESCO man.
Yes.
He actually set up the TVET Institute in Bonn, Germany, got millions of dollars to do it. And he said, all these trades and all this money that's going into support all these skills, which we need more skilled workers, he said there's absolutely nothing on the crafts. So this is an area which sustains communities. Families can work at it, you know, mental health, you know, the benefits of working in the crafts are so great. And so that's what I'm focusing on.
Wow.
So I'll do the books.
It's coming full circle.
And then my plan is to paint more, but I also want to go and live in Paris because I'm actually my plan was to speak fluent French before I die.
I was going to ask, do you?
Well, when I lived there for 3 years, I did have quite good conversational French. It was not bad. But I've been back now almost 20 years, and I've been going to a French conversation group that was started through Alliance, and now it's just a casual thing in a little cafe. And I'm so bad. And they're so good, so I feel really intimidated.
But the plan is to...
Yeah, I'd like to try and do as well as I can.
Yeah.
Because I was so good and I lost it, and I'd like to get back to a reasonable stage.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining on the Power of Women podcast with a schedule that is very hard to pin you down and a schedule that is incredibly hard to keep up with. It's just amazing what you have packed into your life, Lindy. It's just so inspirational, and carrying on the fantastic energy of the generations bringing it through. So well done you.
Well, thank you, Di. Thanks for this opportunity to talk to you. It's been lovely. I've been talking a lot about myself.
That's why you're here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lindy.
Thank you, Di. Thank you.
Please be sure to share this episode, and you can follow us on the socials, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, in Instagram, also on my website, powerofwomen.com.au. Until next time.